Hey tech heads, Fina here. Today I'd like to take a quick look at what people are missing in the Volvo EX30. I've looked at the EX30 in some of my other videos, and I think it looks like a pretty nice car. It is affordable, has a good looking exterior, and nice dynamics. But I found 6 things that some of us might miss, and I'm curious, would these be a deal breaker for you? So let's get into it. The clear number 1 is the lack of a driver display. So Volvo figured that they try to keep the cost down to a minimum, or perhaps they just wanted to go Tesla style and left us only with essential display. Now, if they'd taken a poll among tech heads, they would realize that most of us want at least a head-up display if we're not going to get the traditional display in front of the driver. Generally, people are pretty annoyed that it's not there, including myself, especially knowing how cheaply it can be made these days. So, pity dear Volvo, for a lot of people, the lack of a driver display might be a deal breaker. Because of course, someone that's buying a Volvo might not want to buy a Tesla for this exact reason. What do you think though? Would you miss the display in front of a steering wheel? Or would you be content with occasionally throwing a glance at the top edge of the central display? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Next are buttons. So you wouldn't believe how many people miss good old ergonomic buttons in the Volvo EX30. I was reading how in Nordic countries people often drive with gloves on in the winter, and you really can't adjust anything on a touch display with those on. That's an interesting finding for me. I personally don't drive with gloves on, so I wouldn't have thought of that, but I'm still a fan of buttons. Well, at least there are physical buttons on the steering wheel. Admittedly, they're combined into one area on each side, but so far it seems like they can be controlled pretty well. What's worse is their horrible shiny surface. Ugh, I'd have to keep polishing those because I hate fingerprints and finger grease on my car surfaces. What do you think? I also want to quickly tell you about our partner, OneCar Stereo. If you have a wired Android Auto or Apple CarPlay in your car that you'd prefer to have wireless, OneCar Stereo has some great boxes that will help you do just that. So no more taking your phone out of your pocket on short trips, it will just connect to your car automatically. I have to say, I think that's pretty cool, and it's definitely something that I've been considering getting myself. If it's something that you want as well, check out my link in the description to get 25% off your purchase. Okay, now let's get back to the video. Another thing that people miss in the Volvo EX30 is the rear seat space. So the EX30 is only 4,233 millimeters long, but that's only 30 millimeters less than the ID3 with 4,264 millimeters, where Volkswagen boasted that it had as much room in the back as the Passat. Well, let's not talk about how that's really like in reality, but in the Volvo, that space has just disappeared. The boot space is tiny, the front trunk is there, but it only has 7 liters of volume. There's really not much space in that back seat. So dear Volvo, this really could have been better. So if you're someone that drives people in the back pretty often, you know, either basketball players or really average-sized adults, anybody other than kids really, then the Volvo EX30 might not be for you. And one more thing, the armrest in the back. People miss that quite a bit, and I don't think it's just because they want to rest their arm there on longer journeys, but rather because it means there is no access to the rear only 318-liter boot. So if you're taking a couple of relatives to IKEA, you're not going to be coming back home with a curtain rod. So I think that's pretty annoying when cars lack the basics like that. It would be one thing if this was the case just in the lowest trim, but it's not. You just don't get a rear armrest or boot access in any Volvo EX30. Such a shame. Another thing that a lot of people miss in the EX30 is a nice interior. So I've read many comments from people who had a chance to see the EX30 in person, and apparently the plastics inside look pretty cheap. I think it wasn't a very good move by Volvo to present the show cars just in the Breeze interior, which is made of recycled PVC. And while I love the gesture and the effort to use recycled materials, it does look pretty cheap, at least to me. And it's definitely the worst of all the interiors. Same goes for the base seats, where I've seen comments that the leather looks very rubbery. But don't worry, I had the same feeling with the Tesla Model 3 in white. So be sure not to let other people's impressions sway you. Do try to check out the EX30 in person before you order it. And as always, I would say keep an eye out for reviews from channels that are invited to the first showing, because I think that you typically don't find too many critics there. I wonder why. And the last thing that people miss about the Volvo EX30 is production in Europe. So in order to achieve the low price in Europe, production had to stay in China. Specifically, the Volvo EX30 is made in the cities of Chengdu, Daqing, and Taichung, and the factories use 100% renewable power. Of course, the question is how to transport finished cars from China to Europe and the US is going and will continue to go. By the way, due to manufacturing in China, there is a 25% tariff on imports in the US, but even so, the EX30 will sell in the US starting at a reasonable $36,145. What do you think? Do you mind manufacturing in China, or do you welcome it in exchange for a good price? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. So considering these 6 things that are missing, I would say that the EX30 is still a pretty good car, but there are definitely some compromises. Personally, I think I could probably get used to most of them, though I'm not sure about that driver display. I'd really have to test that out for myself. And of course, I'd have to stop driving basketball players around in my backseat, but I think I could deal with that. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching. If you did like the video and want to support me in my next creation, please give me a super thanks and definitely comment below the video. Let me know how you feel about the EX30 and these missing features. Would they be a deal breaker for you? I'm really looking forward to reading them and hopefully learning something new from you guys, as I usually do. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.